Discover the incredible journey of an Apache who gave it all for family, only to find unexpected. Elijah felt the oppressive heat rise up from the sun-baked earth beneath him, clinging to his skin as he dug near the old barn. Memories flooded his mind, of his father's laughter, of hands that had built this entire ranch from nothing, of traditions steeped in pride and resilience. This was how he had chosen to honor his family, yet lately the burdens felt heavier, constricting around his chest like a noose. With his father's passing, the responsibility stacked ever higher, an avalanche of pressure with each passing year, and now the weight of it was nearly crushing him. Suddenly, his spade hit something hard, sending a jolt through his hands. He knelt down, clearing debris, and unearthed an intricately carved heirloom. Its smooth surface whispered stories of artists and innovators, of ancestors whose existence defied the world's indifference. He examined it closely, a fire igniting within him, a flicker of the artistic spirit he had buried years before, a spirit that clamored for revival, a tantalizing distraction from the ranch's economic turmoil. But he hesitated. Was it right to pursue art when the ranch demanded so much? The community expected him to be a steadfast rancher, resilient in the face of adversity. They needed him, yet the siren's call of creativity buzzed enticingly in his ears. The thought of breaking free from the tight constraints of his identity gnawed at him. Could he chase this desire without betraying his family's legacy? The internal conflict spiraled, anchoring him in a tumultuous sea of doubt. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As days turned into restless nights, he grappled more deeply with his duality. The subtle tension within his family, friends whispering doubts, and the skeptical glances from fellow ranchers were like barbs, each one digging a little deeper into his heart. A part of him feared failure, that pursuing art instead of the ranch could signal weakness, a tearing away from the very fabric of his existence. Yet another part hoped to shape a new identity, to rise with a unique voice that resonated beyond the ranch borders. When sabotage struck, orchestrated by an old rival looking to stifle his emerging talent, the tension rose further. The subtle destruction was like rocks tumbling down a hill, leaving him flailing, fighting against growing insecurity and isolation. Each attempt to showcase his work was met with sneers dripping with contempt. Disdain, a painful reminder of the justified dislike many held for what he represented. Closing his eyes, Elijah felt the world around him narrowing, the weight of judgment settling heavily on his shoulders. As the fateful exhibition approached, the flood of emotions burst to the surface. Desperation and dread twisted into a singular thought. Could he truly stand up, representing not only himself, but all those who had come before him, who faced challenges much like his own? It was a moment of resolution, sitting precariously on the edge of despair, a crossroad where tradition met self-determination. Yet even amidst this growing clarity, a new revelation brushed against his consciousness, deepening his perplexing moral quandary as the clock ticked down. In that heartbeat of uncertainty, with time slipping rapidly through his fingers, Elijah could feel the audience gathering around him, holding their breath, waiting for him to make a choice. Would he seize the opportunity to challenge the antique prejudice that lingered like an unwanted guest? Or would he retreat into the safety of the familiar, forever stuck in a cycle he longed to break? Elijah's heart thundered in his chest as he stood before the consortium of faces, all eyes bearing judgment, anticipation crackling in the tense air. He felt their gazes pierce through him like arrows, each one a reminder of the responsibilities woven into the fabric of his identity. Uncertainty loomed over him, yet the unearthed heirloom glimmered in the thoughts of his future, a beacon urging him closer to self-discovery. What if he refused to back down? A flood of memories spilled forth, his father's wise voice echoing not just of ranching, but of believing in oneself, of nurturing one's true essence amidst chaos. It hit him suddenly. The legacy wasn't merely about the land, it was about the spirit of resilience and creativity that ran through his blood. The exhibition was more than a display of art, it was a manifestation of his struggle, and with each heartbeat, he felt an urge to intertwine his past with the possibility of his future. As he gathered the courage to step towards the canvas that would speak his truth, he could taste the bitter tang of fear mixed with a sweetness of determination. The muck of anxiety threatened to paralyze him, but the thought of dishonoring his lineage ignited a fierce resolve. In the days leading up to the exhibition, Elijah plunged into work, pouring every moment into conceptualizing his piece. Every brushstroke echoed the hardships and dreams of his ancestry, a rhythmic tribute to the ancestors who had conquered their own battles. He painted late into the night, revealing colors on the canvas that mimicked the vibrant sunsets over the ranch, whispers of lost stories surfacing with each pass of his brush. Yet the darkness flickered in and out, the carelessness of fellow ranchers' murmurs gnawed at him. Will he be just another fool chasing silly dreams? He's forgotten where he's come from. Elijah's heart sank, for part of him believed them. Still, the painted image of resilience took shape, a tapestry of juxtaposed strength and vulnerability. It was more than a canvas. It became a mirror reflecting his innermost struggle, a clash of duty versus desire. On the morning of the exhibition, dread coiled tightly in his stomach. Each step towards the venue felt monumental, a battlefield of its own. As he entered, the sharp scent of paint and wood mingled with the cool rush of determination seeping into his veins. He set up his piece, its vibrant colors rich with narratives and emotions, baring his soul for scrutiny. As the crowd filtered in, he felt the anticipation steal his breath. He was ready to show them that it was possible to honor tradition while forging a new path. That navigating two worlds didn't equal to betrayal, but transformation. The moment came when he stood before them, words stammering at the edges of his tongue. He realized finally that to step into the light meant accepting the darkness without letting it devour him. It was the embodiment of courage he yearned for, the understanding that failure wasn't inheriting weakness, but an invitation to grow and redefine oneself. And so, with resolve fueled from deep within, he opened his mouth to speak, ready to challenge the whispers and evoke understanding. But just as he began, an unexpected twist caught his eye. A familiar face emerged from the crowd, one that could either rupture his newfound courage or bolster it beyond his wildest imagination. Would this connection be the rekindling of hope he longed for, or a confrontation he dreaded? The air thickened with tension as the seconds weighted down the space around them, fragile and ready to snap. Elijah's breath caught as he recognized the familiar face. A swirl of emotions tugged at him, needling at the edges of his concentration. It was his childhood friend, Maria, who had once shared the joys of running through the fields of the ranch and the quiet intimacy of their mutual dreams. She had left for the city, a choice that always hung heavy between them. The distance stretched further than geography. It had spiraled into unvisited conversations and ungrasped possibilities. He hesitated, thoughts racing. The crowd around him faded, their expectations unspooling like a half-closed umbrella. The moment felt suspended, his heart thrumming a frantic rhythm that clashed with the stillness of his resolve. Would Maria's presence be a reminder of paths he had not taken? Or would her encouragement push him further into the light? Elijah's voice faltered as he considered both her gaze and the eviscerating expectations suddenly amplified in his mind. What if she thinks I failed? What if she judges me like the others? The inner whispers clawed at him anew. Just standing before the canvas felt like an out-of-body experience, and unraveling the tight knots of doubt required more than a simple declaration. Then he noticed Maria's eyes, bright and unwavering as they locked onto his. She'd come. A slow wave of comfort washed over his frayed subconscious. In that instant, he chose to lean into this unexpected connection, drawing strength from their shared history while eschewing the fear that darkened it. "Look inside, Elijah," he silently urged himself, letting the flood of memories seep into the present. The warmth of sunsets, the camaraderie of youth, and their inseparable laughter lit the path that had led him to this moment. It echoed the true narrative, one he was ready to express, not solely about the ranch or the canvas, but also about love, loss, and discovery. The crowd, assembled in a mosaic of skeptical and curious faces, awaited his words. He inhaled deeply, expelling the toxic thoughts that lingered at the back of his mind. Maria smiled encouragingly, a beacon kindling the fire of his determination. He took another breath, feeling the pull of his lineage, past and present, intertwined like the strokes on his canvas. Today, he finally found his voice, steady and resolute. "I stand before you not just as a rancher or an artist. I am the embodiment of my ancestors' dreams, who fought for both tradition and evolution. This piece," he gestured toward the colorful tapestry he created, "is not just a reflection of the land, but a testament to resilience, a journey of embracing fears and forging a new narrative amidst uncertainty." With each word, Elijah began to unravel the complex emotions residing within him, juxtaposing the weight of expectations and the freedom found in authentic expression. He shared the stories that painted his heart, the moments of doubt, harrowing struggles, and accolades that only made sense when intertwined with the stories of those before him. As he spoke, he caught glimpses of understanding in the faces around him. A flicker of connection sparked in the deepest corners of the room. A shift occurred, and the tension mounted. Their judgment began to transform into empathy. The familiar face of Maria remained a steady presence, her unwavering support radiating comfort. However, just as Elijah felt the tide truly turning, a low murmur erupted from the crowd. One of the fellow ranchers he had braced himself against for months stepped forward, his voice dripping with condescension. "Is this really what the ranch stands for? Some children's fantasy? It reeks of nothing more than indulgence." Elijah's pulse quickened, his heart thudding with the weight of that challenge. With the crowd's eyes fixed on him, he feared once again the unraveling of everything he had built in that moment of vulnerability. Would he collapse under the weight of their scrutiny, or would this confrontation thrust him into a decisive moment of self-definition? The darkness began to weave itself back in, but Elijah felt the strength of his heritage and the support of his friend. The battle wasn't just with the rancher, it was with himself. Should he rise to the occasion or retreat deeper into his doubts? The choice before him loomed large, and he knew it. Could either solidify his resolve or break it entirely. Elijah's gaze shifted from the skeptical rancher's taut face back to the canvas, absorbing the colors he had poured his soul into. The bold brushstrokes felt alive beneath the weight of the moment, as if they were demanding recognition and respect. He inhaled, each breath an anchor pulling him closer to the conviction he needed to wield in this moment. "Every journey begins as a dream," he replied, his voice gradually gaining strength. "And it doesn't matter whether it's perceived as fantasy or reality. It matters that we dare to share it." He could feel the subtle shift in the atmosphere, the crowd's collective breath drawing in, teetering on the edge of acceptance. Even the judgmental rancher, whose presence had once intimidated him, seemed to waver, the weight of Elijah's words pressing against his guarded facade. Elijah's heart raced, fortified by memories of Maria, the relentless spirit of their youth that had once fueled their limitless ambitions. He wondered if she recalled those summer days spent imagining futures untethered by expectations, where possibility bloomed like wildflowers across the meadows. Channeling this nostalgia, he found clarity, and the words flowed with a newfound urgency. I'm not just defending the art on the canvas, but the essence of who we are as individuals. This ranch does not merely cultivate crops, it nurtures dreams. He caught Maria's eye again, and her smile widened, a silent mantra that repeated, "You can do this." With her presence anchoring him, he countered the rancher's earlier derision with an unveiled passion that reverberated through the room. We have the power to shape our own narratives. If we only tether ourselves to tradition, how can we grow? How can we thrive? Elijah pushed further, his determination igniting a fire within himself. The challenges he faced seemed distant now. Each doubt receded like a wave drawing back from the shore, allowing for new ground to break. We must be brave enough to create a path that honors our history, while simultaneously exploring the height of our aspirations. This is art. This is life. This is the very heartbeat of who we must strive to become. The room began to morph before his eyes. A palpable transformation took shape. Emotions flickered across the faces surrounding him, ranging from skepticism to burgeoning respect. Elijah felt the remnants of fear fade, replaced by an authentic assertion of identity. The confrontation had become a revelation, not just for his audience, but for himself. No longer did he regard this moment as a fight against opposition. It had evolved into an affirmation of his growth. The rancher's face, initially drawn tight with derision, softened imperceptibly. "Perhaps we're more than just what our fathers built," he muttered, an almost imperceptible crack in his facade. With the weight of that shift anchoring him, Elijah threw one last fierce glance at the rancher. As though armed with the fire of defiance, he posed a silent challenge. "Dare to join me on this journey?" But just as he relished this moment of triumph, a familiar voice broke through his contemplations. It was another rancher, one he hadn't anticipated facing, stepping out from the shadows with an intensity that could cool his ardor. "You think this is a journey? You believe it's that simple? What if embracing those aspirations means losing everything?" Elijah's breath hitched. The question hung heavy, twisting the narrative just as he thought he'd solidified his ground. This was a confrontation that would demand more than bravado. He stepped closer, the determination still blazing within, mindful that each answer could either forge his new path or tether him to the past. What realities would he have to confront next to determine what truly mattered? Would he embrace the risk of losing everything, or would he find strength in aiming higher? The room felt electric with anticipation, and he realized this wasn't just about the ranch anymore. It was about the very essence of who he was becoming. Elijah stood firm, heart pounding against the turmoil swirling in his mind. The new rancher's challenge rang with a dissonance that shook his resolve. He had prepared for skepticism, but this was a different beast altogether, a visceral threat that prodded at fears he had kept buried. What did he know about losing everything? The weight of the question pressed against his chest. Would pursuing his dreams mean sacrificing the very things he held dear? He glanced around the room, searching for allies, for signs of shared understanding. But the faces were undecipherable. The warmth that had embraced him moments ago now seemed cold and distant, as fear tangled with uncertainty, twisting the energy in the air. "Do you really believe that?" he asked, his voice steady, but a quiver betraying his doubt. The room silenced, every eye fixed on him, as if his answer would determine the room's fate. Or is it that fear has you pinned down, afraid to struggle for something greater? The boldness surprised even him, a reflection of the urgency igniting deep within. The rancher, unflinching yet uncertain, replied, "Call it realism. Reality has its price, and dreams are not free. You'll find that out." Elijah took a deep breath. This was not just confrontation. It was an opportunity to underpin his convictions. Every doubt he had about his own aspirations came flooding back, Yet this moment demanded clarity. He couldn't afford to let fear be his guide. But what kind of life do you live without pursuing your dreams? What stories will remain untold? The rumblings of the crowd hinted at the impact of his words, yet Elijah could not shake the sense of impending loss. What if this gamble cost him Maria's support or his place on the ranch? He had come to see the ranch as more than land. It symbolized his past, his family, and his future. But was he ready to gamble everything for a vision? He remembered her laughter, the shared dreams whispered in the glow of twilight. Could he pursue those dreams successfully without sacrificing what mattered? The choices seemed steep, with a chasm yawning wider with each passing minute. Every risk requires courage, but you must decide who you want to become, he said, pushing through the uncertainty gripping his heart. If it means losing everything to find something greater, then let it be so. I refuse to hide in the shadows of what could be. With those words, Elijah felt a flicker of the flames he had ignited earlier. Each declaration carved away at the chains of fear, setting him free to challenge the perceptions that had held him captive. The rancher narrowed his eyes, appraising him as if Elijah had unveiled a truth long obscured. "You think you're ready for that?" "I don't just think I'm ready. I know I am." This time, his voice rang true, a resounding call standing firm against the tide of doubt and second-guessing. Still, shadows loomed just beyond the light. Elijah caught Maria's glance, a mixture of pride and worry mirrored on her face. The understanding that their dreams might not align, that moving forward could mean a painful reckoning between love and ambition. This was the crossroads he stood upon. As the rancher's skepticism lingered, Elijah turned his gaze back to the canvas hanging behind him, feeling the pulse of every color, every stroke echoing the promise of a brighter future. What awaited him if he stepped into the unknown, fully embracing his inner truth? The room held its breath, and Elijah knew that the next moment would define not just the argument, but the essence of who he was becoming. The stakes had never been higher, and it was time to take that leap, to confront not only the external challengers, but the deeper, unexamined fears within. What if, in seeking everything, he also lost what he cherished most? The moment had arrived, ripe with uncertainty, and just as he prepared to respond, an unforeseen figure stepped through the door, altering everything yet again. The new entry would prove to be far more than Elijah had anticipated. Could this challenge reveal even deeper truths he must face? The door creaked open slowly, gaining everyone's attention. A tall figure emerged from the shadows, hooded, cloaked, the light catching the edges of his features just enough to reveal a hardened face etched with experience. It was Sam, the old ranch hand, returned after years away, following a personal tragedy that had cast him far from the land that raised him. Unexpectedly, his arrival sent ripples through the atmosphere, shifting the focus back onto Elijah, as if he now had to navigate a new terrain laden with complications. "Elijah." Sam's voice was gravelly yet resonant, filled with a weight that demanded recognition. "I've heard about your fight. I've seen the world transform you. But I wonder if you truly understand what you're up against." The air was thick with unspoken histories, and Elijah felt the pressure mounting inside him. Sam approached the front, and in that instant, all eyes turned from the rancher's challenge to explore the depths of this new dynamic. Elijah's heart raced, not from the confrontation, but from the potential wisdom this unexpected encounter might offer. What could he learn from Sam's journey? Dreams? Yes, they are vital, but they come with sacrifices you may not yet be ready to face, Sam warned, his gaze steady and unflinching. "I lost my family chasing after my own dreams once. I would give anything to have them back." Elijah's intent to slay the doubts in the room was met with this stark reality, creating a wave of reflection. This was not merely a battle of ideologies, it was now a confrontation of truths that cut deeper than ambition alone. Could he truly reconcile the dreams he forged with the deep-seated fears of loss and abandonment that resonated in this moment? What if you lose them? Sam pressed, the challenge now simmering with urgency. What if, in this quest for something greater, you destroy the very foundation that nurtured it all? Elijah's resolve shook, that fear twisting in his gut once more. The laughter he cherished became distant echoes. The bright sunsets they shared now loomed as even more distant memories. The thought of risking Maria's support, or worse, the possibility of shattering their bond, sent tremors through his conviction. Yet, in this confrontation, he found a flicker of newfound determination. But isn't stagnation just as perilous? Elijah shot back, his voice rising above the tension. Do the dreams we dare not chase become the regrets that haunt us? Each word felt like an arrow aimed straight at the heart of his opponent and himself, mingling ambition with anxiety. The crowd was with him, but Elijah could sense their apprehension. He had pulled the thread, now it was unraveling. If I'm to embrace the storms ahead, I must also learn to navigate the fears within, he added, taking a deliberate step toward Sam. Help me understand your journey. If we're to learn from mistakes, I want to hear it all. Sam's demeanor shifted, eyes flashing with a mix of skepticism and intrigue. It's not a pleasant tale, Elijah. The lessons came at a steep price, and I can't promise it'll turn you into a hero. I'm not looking for heroics, Elijah said defiantly. I'm looking for clarity, for honesty. I can't fight an invisible battle if I don't know what I'm truly facing. The room grew silent again, charged with possibilities. Sam scrutinized him, then nodded slowly, as if recognizing the fire in Elijah he had once seen in himself. There was potential here, not just for Elijah's growth, but for deeper truths to surface, truths that could either anchor him or unravel everything he believed about sacrifice and ambition. And as Sam took a seat, gearing up to reveal his narrative, Elijah sensed the stakes had shifted once again. What would he unveil, and how would it shape the tumultuous path ahead? The next lesson felt imminent, its shadows stretching longer with every heartbeat. Elijah leaned forward, a cocktail of eagerness and dread swirling within him. Sam settled into his seat, the weight of unshared experiences palpable in the air. For a moment, silence wrapped around him, each attendee grappling with their own thoughts, contemplating the impending narrative about loss and resilience. "All right," Sam began, his voice steadying. "It started when I was around your age. I had the whole world ahead of me, dreams as large as the skies above this ranch. But dreams require more than just conviction. They demand sacrifices. And boy, did I learn that the hard way." Elijah's thoughts raced. He pictured himself standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. Sam's story could become a mirror, reflecting his own choices. Did he truly want to risk everything he held dear to stake a claim in an uncertain future? "I wanted to be a great rancher," Sam continued. "Not just any rancher. I wanted to be one that everyone respected. I thought if I could buy the biggest piece of land, I'd earn that respect. I worked relentlessly, day and night, pushing friends and family aside, convinced I was doing it for them. Then the day came when I finally made my big move. I put everything into acquiring that land, my soul, my life savings, even my promises to family. I thought I was building a future. What I didn't foresee was the storm rolling in from the west, swift and merciless. The land I fought so hard to claim was washed away in a single night, and along with it, my family. They'd waited for me, wanted me with them, but I chose ambition over them." Elijah swallowed, guilt nesting in his stomach. He saw Maria's face, her smiles turning to disappointment if she felt his ambition overshadowing their relationship. Had he already begun to echo Sam's missteps? "Sometimes," Sam continued, his eyes locked intensely on Elijah. It isn't what you're fighting for that defines you, but what you're willing to sacrifice. When everything crumbled, I realized I'd lost more than land. I lost my family, their trust, their love. In chasing the ideal, I fell for the delusion that scale equaled success. The revelation hit Elijah like a physical blow. This struggle for significance, the race to fulfill dreams, was often predicated on building walls instead of bridges. Each word from Sam's lips transformed into questions Elijah needed to confront. What foundations was he at risk of endangering? Where could he acknowledge the balance between ambition and love? So, how do you reconcile that? Elijah asked softly, wanting to peer deeper into the cavernous wounds Sam carried. How do you move on when you've lost everything you hope to protect? Sam's gaze fell, collecting the scattered pieces of a broken past. You learn to live with the ghosts of what could have been. But that's the part you must recognize. It becomes to let loss define you, or to seek a purpose in it. Elijah absorbed every word like a sponge, feeling the churning complexity of what lay ahead. Would he be able to weave his ambitions into a tapestry that included love and connection, rather than letting them fray and unravel? Finally, after moments stretched thin, Sam met Elijah's gaze again. If you choose this path, be prepared. The storms will come, but they have the power to shape you. You must become your own compass. As the room fell into deeper contemplation, Elijah felt the stirrings of resolve. This was no longer just about his dreams, but about constructing a narrative where he wasn't just a lone traveler seeking success. With every layer peeled back, Elijah found purpose crystallizing beneath the chaos, both guardrails and windows to his aspirations, telling him it was possible to chase his ambitions without sacrificing the soul of his relationships. As the shadows deepened outside, Elijah grappled with new truths, thickening the atmosphere around him. What did true balance look like, and would he have the courage to seek it amidst competing desires? He weighed heavily against his own convictions, questions looming larger in his mind. The challenge ahead was to embrace not only his ambitions, but the love entwined with them. And with that thought dancing precariously at the edge of clarity, the next juncture beckoned. How would he now navigate the tangled web of connection and ambition in the days to come? The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, yet Elijah remained rooted to the spot, wrestling with his thoughts. The shadows of awareness shifted within him, revealing paths he'd never taken seriously before. He had always been ambitious, often viewing the world through the lenses of competition and achievement. But now, Sam's story lingered with unsettling clarity, interrogating his motives and desires. The evening grew cooler, yet Elijah felt a warmth rising from within. It was uncomfortable but necessary, like a fire purging the excess as it prepared the earth for new growth. He considered his ambitions, becoming a respected figure in the agricultural community, uplifting his family, and creating a future not just for himself, but for Maria too. But what if the pursuit of those goals required fencing off the very relationships he held dear? Make your own compass, Sam's words echoed in his mind. Elijah turned to the sprawling ranch landscape, a tranquil backdrop to his internal tempest. He felt trapped in the dichotomy between his unyielding drive and the desire for connection. Would forging ahead without a reflective pause lead him to ruin, similar to what Sam had suffered? The question burned fiercely, demanding honesty. With resolve coursing through him, Elijah caught a glance of the barn where he had first joined his father in livestock handling. Those memories were rooted not in ambition, but in love and connection. Warm nights grooming horses, laughter echoing off the barn walls, and the comforting presence of family. And that grainy nostalgia, he sensed something powerful, an innate calling to gather his strength without sacrificing the relationships that nourished his spirit. And yet, as he walked towards the barn, he felt an odd sense of foreboding, a specter of tension that loomed at the edges of his clarity. Was this desire for connection merely distraction? Could it jeopardize his journey towards becoming the leader he aspired to be? The conflicting emotions sparked a fear that perhaps he lacked the fortitude to balance both aspirations and relationships. Maria, he whispered to himself, contemplating the depth of his feelings for her. She represented not just companionship, but also his shared dreams. The thought of failing to nurture them tormented him. Was he unintentionally drifting into the reckless waters Sam had warned against? No longer able to dismiss the weighty decision looming before him, Elijah resolved to speak with Maria, to lay his thoughts bare and gauge her understanding of their future. But how could he articulate the indecision tumbling inside? He felt like a ship without an anchor, tossed amid uncertain waves. As he reached the barn, the familiar scent of hay and leather met him, grounding him momentarily. He leaned against the wooden beams, inhaling deeply in an attempt to quell the storm he felt brewing inside. There, he sensed the flicker of his purpose, one that intertwined ambition with authenticity. But just then, a shadow crossed his path. Elijah glanced up to find Jake, one of the neighboring ranchers who had always seemed more interested in rivalry than companionship. Jake's eyes bore an intensity that was unsettling. He stepped closer, a sly grin creeping onto his face, and implied, "So, Elijah, how's your little plan to outshine us all shaping up? Or is it falling apart at the seams?" The confrontation was electric, a direct assault to what Elijah was trying to cultivate within himself. As Jake's mocking words hung in the air, Elijah realized he was not only fighting the battle of ambition versus love, he was also instigating a war with those who would want to undermine him. Would he defend his vision of a fulfilled life against Jake's taunts? Did standing firm against these antagonistic pressures require a more profound understanding of who he was becoming? The time had come to face not just external opposition, but his own insecurities. With newfound determination, Elijah retorted, "It's not about outshining anyone, Jake. It's about building something real, something that lasts." And with that declaration, he felt a shift within, a step towards clarity amid the chaos. How would he manage this unfolding conflict, both with himself and with the world around him? A new chapter beckoned, one that would reveal whether he could cultivate strength and nurture his relationships without succumbing to the pressures of rivalry. The weight of confrontation lingered in the air long after Jake had retreated, leaving Elijah with a mix of urgency and introspection. Of standing up for himself felt invigorating, yet the underlying discontent gnawed at him. He had voiced his intentions, but now faced the pivotal task of aligning his actions with his declared values. How could he foster connections while navigating the treacherous waters of ambition and rivalry? As he took a deep breath, the sense of the barn grounded him further. He glanced around, noticing the tools that had once been extensions of his childhood enthusiasm: saddles, feed buckets, and brushes. They felt like relics of a simpler time, representing not just chores, but the joy of togetherness with his father. Memories washed over him in waves, and in that moment, Elijah resolved to reconnect with those foundational aspects of his life. Elijah knew the first step involved a conversation with Maria. His determination solidified as he recognized the importance of transparency in their relationship. He'd spent far too long harboring insecurities, and now was the time to unveil them. But a surge of anxiety entwined with his resolve. How would she respond? Would she see it as vulnerability or weakness? The fading light of day cast elongated shadows across the barn, mirroring the uncertainty lurking in Elijah's heart. He realized he could no longer allow fear to dictate his choices. His path required him to lean into discomfort, to transform those anxious thoughts into productive discussions. When he finally found Maria at her parents' home later that evening, she was tending to a row of freshly cut flowers, her hands moving gracefully as she arranged them. He paused for a moment, captivated by her focus, which reminded him of the purpose he sought. Gathering his thoughts, he approached her, feeling the weight of the conversations they'd postponed. "Hey," he started, his voice gently breaking her concentration. She looked up, a smile brightening her features, and the warmth of her presence melted some of his apprehensions. "Hi, Elijah. How was your day?" she asked, motioning for him to join her. Instead of leaning on small talk, Elijah hesitated and then took a breath, choosing to plunge into the depths of his feelings. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about what I want for my career, for us, and I realized I need to be open with you about my fears and hopes. Maria's expression shifted, curiosity taking the place of her smile. I'm listening. He explained the internal tussles that had been plaguing him, the need for ambition against the desire to connect. I want to succeed in my dreams, but I also don't want to lose the special things we have. I fear that pursuing my goals means sacrificing our relationship. She remained silent for a moment, processing his words, and Elijah's heartbeat quickened as he awaited her response. Would she chastise him for his hesitation or applaud his honesty? The uncertainty was almost unbearable. Finally, she stepped closer, wrapping her fingers around his wrist. Elijah, I appreciate you sharing this with me. I felt the pressure in the air too. We both have dreams. If we can communicate openly, I believe we can navigate this together. His heart swelled. There it was, the understanding that had eluded him. It was not merely about ambition, it was about mutual growth. As they talked, a wave of relief washed over him, and he began to envision a future that combined both their aspirations. However, as the conversation deepened, a realization crept in. The steadiness he had felt with Maria also brought unyielding expectations. She was there, offering support, yet he could sense Jake's taunts lingering, an unwelcome reminder of the world's skepticism toward his ambitions. Elijah encountered a lingering question, almost taunting. Was sharing his vulnerabilities truly a strength, or would it backfire? Would being more open lead to greater connection, or expose him to new vulnerabilities? The night wore on, but the shadows of doubt threatened to creep into his mind again, and he realized the next steps would be crucial. He had taken a significant stride by speaking up today, but how could he sustain this newfound awareness amid the challenges that loomed ahead? As they stood, enveloped in the glow of twilight, Elijah felt a dawning sense of purpose, but also an acute awareness that the battle within was far from over. He'd ignited an inner strength, yet Jake's challenges loomed like storm clouds on the horizon, ready to strike. What awaited him next, a test of resilience and commitment, was just beyond the horizon, and he knew one thing for certain: the journey was just beginning. With each passing day, the stakes mounted for Elijah as he stood at the critical junction of his aspirations and the expectations of others. The feedback from the exhibition had ignited a renewed fire in him, sparking an indefatigable desire to merge his artistic endeavors with the commitment to the ranch and his loved ones. No longer did he view ambition as an adversary to connection. He perceived it as a bridge to an enlightened future. As the dawnlight pierced the horizon, he made a pivotal decision. He would no longer allow fear to dictate his choices or allow the opinions of skeptics to stifle his authentic expression. In those early hours, he strolled through the ranch, his heart swelling with an invigorated sense of purpose. Each step resonated with affirmation. This was not merely his family's legacy, it belonged to him too. And he was determined to craft a reality that celebrated both art and the land. Elijah's first act of reconciliation came in the form of an open invitation to fellow ranchers, a community art day at his family barn. It was an audacious move, one that challenged the tribal norms established by tradition and rivalry. He knew, however, that by extending this invitation, he was not just asking them to witness his art. He was inviting them into a dialogue about possibility, resilience, and the intricate tapestry of their shared history. When the day arrived, sprightly colors dotted the landscape as ranchers tricked their wary faces, slowly transforming into expressions of curiosity. Elijah set up an array of art supplies, brimming with creative potential. As they painted together, the experience morphed from a simple activity into a heartfelt exploration of identity and dreams. The laughter filled the air, weaving bonds that had long lain dormant. The moment became transformative when Jake, who had once mocked Elijah's pursuits, approached the easel he had set up. With hesitant strokes, he mingled the vibrant colors, his wariness melting into the joy of self-expression. "It's always been hard to see beyond the ranch, Elijah," he admitted, quietly, almost reluctantly. "But I guess I'm learning it doesn't have to be. There's a way we can blend both worlds." Elijah's heart surged with recognition. They were evolving as a community, a collective, but also individuals fighting the torrents of their own fears. This day marked a significant milestone, not solely for Elijah, but for everyone who dared to step beyond the rigid frameworks of tradition. His initiative, once an uphill battle, now blossomed into an opportunity for shared growth. As dusk fell, the barn became alive with stories exchanged over vibrant canvases. Elijah felt a powerful affirmation, tethering him to the essence of his ambition and his heritage. It resonated with the wisdom Sam had imparted. What he craved was not merely success in his art, but validation in his humanity, rooted in relationships that encouraged rather than constrained. In that communal atmosphere, an unexpected face appeared. It was Maria, her presence illuminating the dimming barn as she carried in a basket of refreshments. Their eyes met in a beautiful exchange, filled with unspoken understanding. She had come to show her support, to demonstrate the depth of connection that flourished between them. Clarity washed over Elijah. It was not just about pursuing his art. It was about illuminating the path they could forge together. "Look what you've created, Elijah," Maria said softly, glancing at the laughter and camaraderie surrounding them as ranchers painted side by side. "You've turned fear into fellowship and dreams into reality." Her words wrapped around him, instilling a solid confidence that he had gained not through the absence of fear, but mastery over its grip. This was true transformation, and with it, he felt empowered to embrace both parts of his identity without apologies. As the stars dotted the night sky, Elijah stood at the center of the barn, surrounded by a tapestry of understanding and growth. He was no longer confined to the established norms rigidly adhered to by others. He had established a new horizon that integrated creativity with legacy. Months later, he found himself preparing for another exhibition, this time with the vibrant tapestry of the ranch integrated into his work. The art displayed not only his struggles and triumphs, but also the power of collaboration and community. As he watched the patrons engage, discuss, and admire the artwork, he felt the seeds of profound connection implanted deeply within him and his community. The recognition he longed for in the art world began to blossom, reaching beyond the borders of the ranch. But every accolade felt secondary to the genuine transformation he had undergone. The whispers of doubt were now drowned out by the symphony of shared voices celebrating the delicate dance of heritage and ambition. In achieving this synthesis, Elijah had conquered not only his fears, but had also harnessed the courage to embrace vulnerability, inviting others to do the same. The legacy he now carved was more profound than he had dared to imagine, a living testament to resilience, connection, and the extraordinary tapestry of self-discovery. As he gazed upon the faces gathered in admiration at the opening of his exhibition, Elijah felt a swelling pride uncontained by arrogance. He had navigated a tortuous path, but he had emerged, not just as a rancher or an artist, but a true embodiment of his dreams. An example of how one can honor the past while boldly forging ahead into the future. This was the moment of culmination, crystallizing not just a personal achievement, but a breakthrough that resonated across his community, challenging them all to step into the light together, free from the burdens of isolation and fear. Elijah knew that this journey was meant to be shared, and with a heart full of gratitude, he acknowledged the importance of uplifting others as they too strive for their dreams. Now is the time for you to join the journey of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. For only true fans of personal overcoming stories grasp the significance of standing together in pursuit of beautiful narratives. Don't wait even one more second to share.